Hey everybody, it's Irene with BrainStormAcres, and today we're going to talk about drip irrigation. Okay, if I have a row of plants and I want to water the whole row at once, the best way to do that is with a drip line. And this is typical of what a drip line looks like. It comes in a roll, and it will give you two very important pieces of information. It will say how long it is and what the emitter spacing is. Now, what that means is, on this one it says 6 inches dripper spacing. Drippers are the same thing as emitters. That means that every 6 inches along this entire tube, there is an emitter. And it normally comes out both sides of the pipe, hose, call it what you will. I like the 6-inch spacing. I cannot always get it. It's particularly useful for close plantings. So what I mean by that is I plant a row of green beans. And therefore I want my area to be pretty much continuously watered because I'm going to have plants every 2 or 3 inches. And if I put my emitters every foot, that means the guys in between are, either I'm going to have to run it a huge amount, or the guys in between are going to dry out. Now, historically, I can only get 6 or 9 inch emitters, dripper spacing. This year I have actually managed to get 6 inches several times. And I'm delighted because it just makes it so much easier. I don't have to run extra lines and stuff. It gets complicated and messy when you have to run these extra lines. And I don't like complicated or messy, so that's a bad idea. In my case, I do not use this kind of hose except in one part of the garden, and that's because that's a temporary installation. In order to use this, you have to use fittings that you poke a hole in this hose here and you stick a connector in there, and then the connector goes to the little tube, just like this, where you can see they're actually stuck in there with little connectors. And this thing here is called a goof plug. And if you're going to use this kind of system, you need to have some goof plugs because at some point you will goof. Or, yeah, you'll goof, or you'll change your mind. These can be reused a bunch. But in order to move the location of these little side hoses, you're going to have to put in a goof plug. And all it is a plug that literally slides in there and plugs up the hole that you've made the last time. Don't want to get too complicated on this because it doesn't have to be complicated. But to understand the basic irrigation systems, this attaches to a watering system somehow with some sort of a little connector. I keep these together because I have a broad selection because I do lots of things. So if I'm attaching it to a hose like this, I would have something like this, which basically has a pointy stuff on both ends. One of these ends would go into the end of the hose here that I have this stuff. The other one would go into the mainline hose. They call this the main line. Then the water comes through this out to your plants. And when it gets to the end, you can't just let it run out, so you have to stop it. So how do you stop it? Use a little plug. It looks just like a goof plug. In fact, you can actually interchange them if you need to. And you just plug the end of the hose. Now, I've got my I've got my patio system. It's such an easy way to do things. Like I said, we used them for probably a couple of years. I expanded them a little bit at a time as I understood how the system worked. But then you have the problem of sometimes you can't be there to turn on the hose. Well, it didn't take long with the weather and everything else here to make me want to use a timer. And they make them. This one is by Orbit, which is one of the major producers of irrigation equipment. And it says, keep from freezing, store above 32 degrees. The reason they say that is if this has water in it, when it freezes, it will break everything inside it, and you can throw this in the trash. So do not allow it to freeze. Now, this sat out in my greenhouse this winter, and it froze out there, but it was bone dry, so I'm not worried about it. This is battery powered. It does not require any electrical connections, and we use these for several years. They come in different fancynesses. This one has a single hose connection on it. Remember, that's where we would put this. And you can use this to just plain turn on a sprinkler, ye old-fashioned sprinkler that goes with the hose to the sprinkler, and you could use that to do that, and it works great. Or you can use it to attach to a more complicated irrigation system. They sell these in different complexities. I haven't priced them recently. They were never cheap, but they're worth their weight in gold if you're not able to water when you need to. I want to say they were about 30 bucks a piece back when I was buying them, but they last for years and years if you take care of them and don't let them freeze with water in them. And the ones that I was buying for 30 bucks a piece, and I think they're about the same price. I don't think the electronics has gotten cheaper, so a lot of times they're not any more expensive than they were 10 years ago. This thing here, if you can read this, it says auto, set clock, start time, how long, how often, and off. Okay, it's turned to off right now, which is why it says off right there, because the batteries in here are actually good. And it uses 2 AA batteries, alkaline only. Maximum operating pressure 100 psi for outdoor use with cold water only. Do not operate at temperatures exceeding 120 degrees and keep from freezing. This means if you're down in Phoenix, you might have to pay attention. But generally speaking, as long as it's not in the sun, you'll probably be fine. Up here, it's not a problem. I used to have a couple of these that had, instead of just one connector like this, it actually had 4. That was awesome. That was really awesome, because I could have it had 4 separate valves to it, and that means I could water one section of the garden at a time, because I didn't have the kind of really nice water pressure that we've got. We've got the same kind of water pressure here now that most people have living in town because of the setup that we've built with pressure tanks and all that kind of stuff. I know one of the things I need to mention. If you are using a gravity-fed system, you have to read the fine print. What do I mean by that? This doesn't say anything specific here. This is made in Vietnam. It says, this says the maximum pressure. So I could use this on a drip irrigation, a gravity-fed irrigation system. So what do I mean by gravity-fed? Okay, I take a 55-gallon oil drum, I take a IBC tote, the big square ones. I take something like that and I stick it up on a stand so that it is higher. The water source is higher than my garden, and I literally just let the water come out by gravity. Okay. Some irrigation will not work with that. These will always tell you, pre-inserted drippers save you time and water. This may say something. This may not say anything useful. Let's see. Okay. This one will tell you for above ground installation, and that's something I should mention. These cannot be buried. So if you are going to mulch, you need to mulch and then put these on top. If you bury them, they will clog up. There are types of irrigation that can be buried. This is not one of them. There are a couple of types. I own some. I was gifted it. It's very expensive. It's copper colored so that gophers don't want to chew on it, is what they said. They said the gophers and rodents didn't like to chew on it. So they made it taste bad by putting copper in the pipe. But unless the drip line specifically says that you can bury it, don't, because it will just clog up. The flow rate on this is at 25 psi, so 25 pounds per inch of pressure will give you 0.65 gallons, so a smidge more than a half a gallon, from each dripper in an hour. Now, I've actually done the math before. You can figure it out. You can count the number of drippers you have, and you can figure out, well, let's see. I wanted to get a half a gallon of water. That means I'm going to need to run about an hour. So it's not an instant thing. You know, you're dripping that water out of there. It literally drips out of here. It doesn't pour out. So you need to be aware of that. But, you know, there's a picture on the back that shows how you can use it with poly tubing, this kind, and goof plugs and connectors and micro tubing and all kinds of stuff. They used to have, at the big box stores, little brochures that they handed out. Like many things, most of those are no longer available. But if you go to the websites, if you go to the Dig website, or you go to the Orbit website, or you go to the Rainbird websites, they will have PDFs, or sometimes they even have calculators. I mean, they have all kinds of stuff that will help you figure out what parts you need and where to get them. So use the resources. I remember sitting down and reading a couple of these things, and it was pretty cool, actually, because they explained how everything worked and, you know, blah, blah, blah. You need to know that when you start. You can just wing it. I mean, like right now, I've been doing this for 17 years, and I don't usually do the math. I usually will just know that I should start with, say, 15 minutes, and then if my soil has already got some moisture to it, and twice a day at 15 minutes for a shallow rooted plant is usually good. But I will watch those plants very, very carefully for at least a week. And I will watch if there's any weather changes. So if I say I set it up early in the spring and the weather's pretty good and it's really not that hot and the wind is not blowing that hard, and wow, 15 minutes a day is plenty. That plant is just happy. Well, all of a sudden the temperature goes up 15 degrees and the wind has come up, and now the plant looks terrible because it's not getting enough water. Okay, well, you might want to water it twice a day, or you may need to water it twice a day and twice as much, you know. So that's the kind of thing you'll need to figure out. But it's lovely. I mean, it says call a Dig Pro. This got a 3-year warranty. So if you take care of this stuff, I've probably got pieces out there that I'm using right now that are 5 or 6 years old, maybe older, because it depends on how much you use it, how much you leave it in the sun. Because we're high elevation here, the UV tends to kill plastic. It doesn't kill this particularly, but it'll kill the plastic connectors. So you'll be moving something and you'll hear crack and the plastic connector's broken. Now, if I'm going to install pipes like I have here, I do recommend some kinds of emitter heads, and I don't recommend others. I should mention that if you're doing something simple like this, they have all kinds of emitters to control the flow out the end of that thing, because remember, that's just a hose. That's an itty bitty hose, but it's still a hose. And they sell all kinds of different colors and shapes and sizes. And yeah. And why are they all those different colors and shapes and sizes? To help it make it easy for you to determine what's what. This one, for instance, I've got it written in here, 16 liters per hour or 4 gallons per hour. Because this stuff will always be both metric and English. This one is 1 gallon per hour or 4 liter per hour. This one doesn't have a label on it. This green one is 8 liters per hour or 2 gallons per hour. Why would I need something that puts 2 gallons per hour? Well, maybe I'm watering a tree, and I would have several of these out there watering around a tree, because a tree, one of the things that people don't understand is how much water a tree takes. If you go to some place like Stark Brothers or one of the other big tree companies, they will tell you your tree needs a minimum of 1 inch of water per week. Now, that doesn't mean 1 inch of water like in a spot that big. It means 1 inch of water at least as far as the drip line of the tree. Now, the drip line is the farthest branches that extend out. And that means that every square inch inside that drip line, if your tree is 6 feet around, every square inch inside that 6-foot circle needs 1 inch. 1 inch of water every week. And you can either create a basin situation, literally flood the basin, and get them that inch that way, or you can use various types of drip emitters or root waterers. I mean, I'm not going to get into there's for every purpose there is a different type of emitter. For the kind of gardening irrigation we're doing, we use pipes in the ground that come up out of the ground and then have something screwed onto the top. When we lived in California, there was one house that we rented. Yeah, just one house that we rented that had an automatic watering system. And you just literally turned on a watering system and the heads popped up out of the ground and it watered the lawn. And that was just the front lawn. And it was a small space. And it was a terrible waste of water. But because it was sloppy, they were poorly adjusted and all that kind of thing. But you can use a similar system without the sloppiness to run this sort of stuff. And that's what we have here. We have a combination of different kinds of heads. So your pipe comes up out of the ground and it's got a male screw threads on it. This is a female and it screws down onto there like that. Now, there's 3 main kinds of these things out there that are meant for attaching the polytubing and the drip lines and all that other kind of stuff. This one is my favorite kind. And it has not been available for a minimum of 6 months. Anywhere. We have gone to every hardware store. We have gone to every big box store. And nobody has them. Who makes it? I am thinking it might be Rainbird, but I'm not sure, and I actually can't see a label on here. That's interesting. I would have expected that it would have said somewhere on here. What I like about this is these have 12 connection spots inside. The inside, to shut off the water to one of those connectors, because that's the bottom, where these tubes go in. In order to shut off one of those, all I have to do is put a little cap on it. So I can decide that this one is already currently set up to use 2 little hoses coming out of here. Just 2. Or I could have all 12. It wouldn't make any difference. This machine does not care. And what I like about it is it has replacement parts. Now, they don't have them in the store. But I went to their website and I can buy these replacement caps. I can buy the little strainers that go in here to keep grit and stuff from getting down into your hoses. I can buy there's a gasket here that's invisible to the human eye practically. I could buy all these little things for cheap. I mean, you know, like a couple of dozen of these caps for 98 cents or something ridiculous, or even some of those slightly more expensive stuff, $1 a piece or something. Very inexpensive, but they don't sell the replacement parts in the home stores. They don't. Like I said, we have not been able to buy this for well over 6 months. Basically, actually, I don't know if they were even available last year. That's a good question. I think they disappeared last year sometime. What are your options? What can you actually buy in the store right now? You can buy one of these. This is made by Dig, made in USA. And this is made by Orbit. It does not say where it's made. It says US, China, and Taiwan. It could be made in any of those 3 locations. This one's checked off as being China. Which one do I like and which one do I not like? I do not like Dig. And I'll tell you why. Okay, first of all, and I'm spoiled, I have to admit, when I'm working with these guys, and I have probably a dozen heads in the garden right now that are this kind, if I need to change a hose, I just change it super easy. If it's a micro hose, it literally just slides in here. It's a press fit and it's in. But if I want to change that, I pull it out and it's out. If it is one of these or an extension tube like this or something else that is a different size, then I have to use a connector, which, by the way, comes with the systems if you can buy them. This black butt end here, they come in black and pink. I always thought it was a sort of weird pink. They're sort of a purpley pink. This square part slides in here. Now there's a hole through the middle here. It just slides in like that. And this part goes on to any of these type tubes. Okay. Makes it super simple to change things up. So if you change your mind at any time during the season, you replant your garden there, you need to take out some of the hoses, you need to add more, super simple. These beasties, these are cool because they turn on and off. So it is nice, you can turn them off just the same way as the caps turn those off. But it is a bear to get these things out of here. And in order to get the hose on, I don't really think they want you to take them out. So I have had them fall out, but they don't really want to come out. Now, that means this is like, I either have to unscrew it. I can't unscrew it, because if I unscrew it, now I'm going to have this spiral of hoses. So that means I've got to have this attached. It's been screwed onto the pipe. And now I have to take my hoses and I have to stick them up. It will not work with the little bitty stuff. It just doesn't fit. It's the wrong size. So that means it will only work with the 1/4 inch stuff, which is okay. A lot of people don't use anything but 1/4 inch stuff. Let's see if I can get a piece of the 1/4 inch sticking out here. Now I have to cram this on here. It is not easy to cram this on. In fact, it is really hard to cram it on. These are also hard to cram on. Heating the tubing in hot water will help, but still not easy. I actually recommend leaving it out in the sun so that it'll warm up. Why else don't I like it? They leak. They tend to leak. The seals in here are not tight. I can make this seal tightly to the pipe, but these things tend to leak. And if you have to change anything, trying to change the things is just a real pain. The easiest way to change things is actually to cut stuff off